All right, so my opponent began by saying that the social impact wouldn't actually be that much because the wealthy already have money and that it wouldn't lead to a widening gap. But that's not really the point. The point is that right now the gap is only economic, where they have more money and the lower classes don't. This could lead to the problem that there'll be physically and mentally, there will be a gap in intelligence and physical capabilities, which will kind of create like almost two separate types of people. You'll have the upper class, which will be kind of just better in every way, and then you'll have the lower classes, which won't. And the problem with social inequality is that it leads to a variety of problems other than just having two separate groups of people. It has significant implications for growth and economics for the country as a whole, not just for specific groups. And it can also concentrate power to the one position where they can make the decisions, where the other kind of lower classes don't have as much voice. And political power will be in the hands of a few, and kind of leads to a skewed way of how resources can be split. And citizens can kind of lose confidence in institutions, which cause an eroding in social cohesion and confidence in the future. And there's economic instability as well when you have a large lower class, which is so far removed from a ruling upper class. And this all comes from the International Monetary Fund. And she also stated that it could improve health in general while not preventing specific issues that you would find in the embryo. For example, she mentioned resistances. This form of engineering is not even necessary to do that. There's other forms which are kind of gene therapy where you don't actually have to do it kind of as invasively. And Carl Zimmer told Business Insider in an article that he hasn't seen anyone give legitimate medical reasons for using this CRISPR kind of gene therapy that couldn't be achieved in other more traditional means that we have. And there's also the issue of unintended medical issues. Right now, if you splice genes, there's unintended consequences that can happen. For example, some genes will provide protection against certain diseases. So if you increase those, you might increase susceptibility to others that wouldn't be addressed by that. And there's also the probability that there's off-target effects which are unintended consequences, which could lead to generation-long consequences in the genome. So it could manifest itself over several generations and kind of increase over generations, and even people who are not who have not had this therapy would have it in their genome just because it was present in somebody in their family tree. And so she didn't address the solvency, so I'm not gonna go into that, I guess. And also she mentioned that the FDA is currently regulating this. They're not really regulating this as she stated. They're kind of doing some other stuff. And well, so they don't have. Oh, hey, here's. They're regulating genetic testing and research, but there's no laws expressly forbidding genetic manipulation in humans, and this is according to Christopher Cobble Esquire, who deals with genetic law and stuff like that. And another consequence that my partner didn't address is that it can affect the overall ratio in sex, where there will be, well, when parents can choose whether they want a boy or a girl, usually in, for example, China and India, it tends towards boys, where parents will want male children. And this was, in a poll conducted by Gallup, 40% of Americans said that they would prefer a boy, to a margin of 28% female, and the rest saying they have no preference. And there's a pretty bad consequences that come from sex selection. And this comes from a journal article called Children to Others, the Ethics of Designer Babies, and it's that sex selection can lead to sex discrimination against women in society, and it also contributes to social issues where women will feel like they're not as important because more people are choosing to not have them, given the choice. And in another article by Z.W. Shing, titled Abnormal Sex Ratios in Human Populations, Causes and Consequences, she states that the large cohorts of surplus males now reaching adulthood are predominantly of low socioeconomic class, and concerns have been expressed that their lack of marriageability and consequent marginalization in society may lead to antisocial behavior and violence, threatening the stability and security of society. Also, it sets kind of parents to decide other things about their children, where if you have that much control over a child, where you're choosing their physical and possible mental, capacities, you're gonna feel, right now parents are already kind of overbearing, where they want, they'll send them to sports or music programs against their will just because they want kind of them to conform to their views. This way it'll be even more difficult because they'll have more control physically, and that'll kind of make them seek more control over how their child develops.